Hey everyone, welcome to my Resto Druid Mythic Plus guide for Dragonflight Season 4. Druid is looking really strong this season and should be a great choice for Mythic Plus, whether you want to push the highest keys or just pug around. Druid has a great combination of strong healing output, excellent damage, and lots of utility. In my opinion, its only real weaknesses being that specking into an interrupt is kind of annoying, and that can be a little tough to recover from unexpected damage. In this guide, we're going to go over talents, stats, the tier set, how to play the spec. Timestamps are below if you want to jump to something specific. In Season 4, Druid is simply carrying over their tier set from Season 3. This makes a lot of sense because this tier set is the only one that synergizes with their new Grove Guardians playstyle. For this tier set, the 2 set bonus, you and your Grove Guardians nourishes now heal 2 additional allies within 40 yards at 40% effectiveness, and the 4 set bonus, consuming clear casting, now causes your regrowth to also cast nourish onto a nearby injured ally at 200% effectiveness, preferring those with your heal over time effects. This is a pretty impactful tier set and a big reason why the Druid playstyle has changed quite a bit since Season 1 and 2. In Season 4, you'll focus more on Grove Guardians and regrowths, especially with clear casting, than your heal over time spells, which might be a little counterintuitive for longtime Druid players, but actually makes the spec a little less preventative and therefore a little more pug friendly. We'll cover that more specifically in the healing rotation section. As for stats, as a Druid, you want to prioritize haste over verse, over crit, over mastery. Generally though, you're just going to wear your highest item level piece because intellect trumps all that stuff. As a heal over time and damage over time spec though, haste is far and away your best secondary stat. Verse provides passive healing, damage, and defensive increases. For talents, the Druid trees are a tale of 2 trees. The Druid tree itself is extremely flexible and allows for a ton of personal preference. I want to showcase a few options here, but I'll start with the most generic one, so if you just want something to copy and paste without using your brain, here's my suggestion as just kind of an all-around safe build. This build is going to forego Skull Bash, so you won't have a kick, but you get extra defensiveness with matted fur, thick hide, well-honed instincts, and renewal. If you're doing a lot of pugging or not a confident player, I really don't recommend Heart of the Wild. It can be a huge damage cooldown, but in pugs, it's really hard to get full use out of it as it seems like you constantly need to shift back and heal, and it's a great way to bait yourself into letting teammates die. But if you really want to take it, you can drop a point from well-honed instincts or improve Nature's Cure if you don't need it for the dungeon. Alternatively, you can spec into Skull Bash for an interrupt. This is not a bad idea at all, and contributing interrupts as a healer is an excellent way to help yourself out. This build does hurt a bit as you're ditching some pretty nice talents to take the very expensive Skull Bash, but interrupts definitely can be that important. Finally, some flex points. For Incorporeal Week, you're going to want to make sure you grab Hibernate. For Sanguine, you may want to drop a point into Typhoon to help move mobs. The Druid tree, on the other hand, is more or less set it and forget it. You're specking into double Life Bloom. We're choosing pretty much everything that buffs Grove Guardians and regrowths, including foregoing Convoke in favor of Tree of Life, as well as Reforestation. But let's get into the good stuff, how to play the spec. I always like to break healing specs down into layers, and I don't think any spec lends itself more to this than Resto Druid. Your first layer or maintenance spells is Efflorescence, Life Bloom, Cenarian Ward, your third charge of Grove Guardians, and Adaptive Swarm. Honestly, you want to try and keep these spells up with robot-like efficiency. Whenever I feel like I'm struggling to heal on my Druid, I notice it's almost always because I got lazy with my maintenance spells. Having these spells just rolling provides a surprising amount of healing and sets the stage for your other heals. Drop Efflo in a spot where it's going to affect the largest number of people, keep Cenarian Ward on the tank, put Life Blooms on anyone who needs a little extra healing. You want to keep your Adaptive Swarm stacks as high as possible. Basically, the best target is a friendly player who has 2 or 3 stacks already, if possible. You don't want to cast it on anyone at 4 or higher because you're wasting stacks that way. There is also a Brain Dead Weak aura I've seen a lot of people use that will just highlight the best person to cast it on with the sound notification if you don't want to think about it. I'll leave it in the description. Last but not least, you don't want to sit on 3 charges of Grove Guardians for too long, so if you're sitting at 3, you may as well cast 1, get that cooldown rolling too. When moderate damage starts to go out, you can use Regrowth for single target damage. If you're a long-time Resto Druid player, you probably learned over and over not to lean too heavily on regrowth. However, things have changed. Let it fly, especially if you've got a clear cast proc because of the synergy with your 4 set. As for AoE, you got Wild Growth, and Swift Mend is an instant cast single target heal with special significance. First of all, casting Swift Mend is going to activate your Soul of the Forest talent, which will empower your next regrowth, wild growth, or rejuvenation. You want to use this purposefully. A big Soul of the Forest wild growth or regrowth can do some serious healing. Also, with our reforestation talent, every third Swift Mend is going to activate Tree of Life form for 10 seconds. It's a good idea to track this somewhere on your UI so you know when it's going to happen. Playing around the talent isn't really necessary in most keys or situations, but it's a good thing to learn with experience. Finally, we got Grove Guardians. These guys make up a good portion of your overall healing. They're almost like having a living heal over time spell. I like to keep one out to prevent the charges from capping and then add in more just as damage begins to ramp up. What about rejuvenation? How have we gone this long into a Resto Druid video and not talked about it? Well, at the moment, it's just not that great compared to your other spells. You can use it for some healing on the move or to ramp for big incoming damage, which we'll talk about in just a second. But outside of that, you're really not going to lean on it nearly as much as you used to. So let's get into cooldowns now. Resto Druid is not a very cooldown heavy spec. The only things we're running are Flourish and Tree of Life. And Flourish isn't really a huge cooldown, but since it's only on a minute CD, we're going to be using it all the time. For most big damage events, having all your maintenance spells out with a Grove Guardian or 2 and then popping a Swift Mend into Wild Growth and hitting Flourish right when the damage goes out will cover you for just about everything, and from there you can patch heal with regrowths. For the most extreme cases, we're going to bring Rejuvenation into the mix. About 8 seconds before the damage is coming out, make sure your maintenance spells are up. Cover everyone with rejuves, Soul the Forest, Wild Growth into Flourish, and then patch with regrowths. You should be able to heal through pretty much anything. Tree of Life increases all your healing by 15% and most notably makes your regrowths instant. Great to use anytime you don't have access to Flourish or you're going to need to do some spot healing or you just need that 15% healing boost. Don't forget you also get this from every third Swift Mend, so you want to kind of try not to stack your actual hard casted Tree of Life when you know that you're just going to have a Tree of Life coming from a Swift Mend very shortly. Druid is known as being a pretty high damage healer, so let's talk about your damage priority. How many of these spells you're actually going to get out depends on how much or how little healing you need to do on a given pull. Going into cat form does require a bit of a commitment on your part, as you are going to need to shift back out again to heal, and you're going to need some experience to get a feel for when it is and is not okay to shift into cat form. But maintaining Sunfire on everything only costs a global, and you can Moonfire as many mobs as you're able to, starting with priority targets that will live the longest, all in your human form. But beyond that, you're going to go into cat form. In cat form, you want to maintain Rip on as many targets as you can that will live for its duration, build combo points with Shred, and spend combo points on Rake, again if the target's going to live, or Ferocious Bite if it's going to die soon. For AoE again, you can tab around with Rip if things are going to live, swipe if they aren't, and then choose to spend combo points either on Rake or Ferocious Bite depending on how long the target's going to be alive. So we'll wrap things up with utility. Druid has lots of tools that can help out in a 5-man group. If you decide to take Skull Bash, I'll leave a macro in the description that will automatically shape you into cat form and then cast Skull Bash in one button press. It's not a great interrupt, but it's better than nothing. You've got Incapacitating Roar as your AoE stun on a 30-second cooldown, so throw it out often to prevent casts and other abilities from getting out. Ursula's Vortex is great for grouping up mobs, keeping them in one spot. You can even stop casts, but it's not always super reliable. You've got Soothe to deal with enrages, you've got Stampeding Roar to speed yourself up, as well as your group. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the guide. Druid is going to be my pick personally as a main for Dragonflight Season 4. If you did enjoy the guide or you got something from it, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to see more of my content in the future. If you're looking for anything related to my UI, make sure you check the description for more information on that. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.